Mister, would you be my dad? The words struck Tom Carter like a sudden gust of wind on a calm morning. Unexpected, disarming, and strangely comforting, he stood motionless in front of a folding table loaded with apple pies and buttermilk biscuits. In one hand, he held a basket half full of sage and rosemary, and in the other, a bag containing seed packets. Around him, the weekend farmer's market thrived with lively conversations and the sound of footsteps. The aroma of fried catfish and freshly baked cornbread filled the air. Yet, in that moment, all of it disappeared. The only thing Tom could focus on was the little girl with wild curls peeking out from under a faded purple hoodie. She looked up at him with eyes too serious for someone so young. She could not have been older than 6, but her words carried no childish playfulness. They were intentional and full of yearning. Her small hands gripped the edge of the pie table as if trying to hold herself steady. For a long second, Tom remained silent, his jaw moving but no sound escaping. The girl did not flinch. She simply tilted her head, waiting. "I am sorry. What did you say?" he finally asked, bending slightly to meet her gaze. She did not blink and repeated, "Would you be my dad?" Tom felt his chest tighten, and it was not just from surprise. It had been years since anyone had looked at him with such directness. Years since someone asked something of him that was not about bills or broken machinery. He glanced around, half expecting. Someone was expected to come running, perhaps her mother or a vendor familiar with the family, but no one arrived. "I do not believe I am the right person for this," he whispered as he stood up again. She pressed her lips together as if she had heard that excuse many times before. Then, with a slight frown, she reached into the pocket of her oversized hoodie and took out a crumpled brown paper napkin folded neatly in half. She showed it to him. Inside were homemade cookies, slightly misshapen but carefully wrapped. The scent of cinnamon and nutmeg rose to Tom Carter's nose. A trembling line of icing around the edge spelled out in painstakingly crooked handwriting, "Thank you, my mom says. Cookies can fix most things," the girl explained. "This one is for you." Tom blinked, caught somewhere between laughter and surprise, unable to speak. "What is your name?" he asked. "Ah, Mia Williams," she replied. "My mom is the one selling the peach cobbler at the end of the row." He looked down the long line of vendor tents and spotted her tall, slender mother, wrapped in a denim apron dusted with flour, arranging cornbread loaves with practiced care. Alice, if he remembered correctly, was the woman for whom he had bought banana nut muffins once or twice, never exchanging more than polite greetings. Mia followed his gaze carefully. "She does not know I asked. She believes dads just leave. But I'm not sure all of them do," she said softly. Tom's throat tightened again, this time with an emotion he hesitated to name. "Mia," he said gently, "I do not think your mom would want—" She cut him off quickly. "She never says what she wants. She just keeps working and working. Sometimes I think—" She was losing the ability to smile. Tom Carter did not reply, not because he disagreed, but because he understood deeply. Mia Williams shrugged and stepped back, leaving the cookie in his palm. "It's all right. You don't have to decide this moment, but I saw you help that man last week, the one who fell with the milk crate. You didn't say a word. You just helped. That's why I chose you," she said before turning away. Her small sneakers made gentle sounds on the grass as she vanished down the line of vendors. Something weightier stayed behind. A simple cookie, a smudged thank you, and a question that would not leave his chest. If this story touched a quiet part of your heart, tap the like button and share. Tell us where you are listening from by leaving a comment below. Tom looked again at the cookie. The icing had blurred from the heat of his hand, but the message still clung to the paper. "Thank you." It had been a long time since he heard those words. His eyes moved toward the peach cobbler stand. Alice was sharing a laugh with a customer, brushing flour off her apron as she squinted into the sunlight. However, the laughter never seemed to reach her shoulders. There was a tension to her, a weight no baked treat could hide. Tom sighed and slid the cookie into the inside pocket of his worn flannel jacket, right where he once kept his wedding ring. Maybe it was just a cookie, or maybe it was a silent invitation. Either way, it mattered. For the first time in many years, something had stirred within the quiet walls he had built around himself, and he could not decide if that feeling frightened him or made him want to return the following Saturday. When the next Saturday arrived, it came with a gentle drizzle, and the fresh scent of rain-soaked wood. Vendors were still arranging their stalls when Tom Carter drove his worn-out Chevy truck into the gravel lot behind the farmer's market. The windshield wipers complained with a squeak, and for a moment he stayed seated, clutching the steering wheel as if it could guide him on whether he was making a mistake. He had not planned to come back. He told himself that it was too soon, too much. He did not need attachments. He did not want them. Yet, that little girl's voice, so quiet yet so certain, kept weaving through his mind like a song he could not forget. And there was the cookie he had not eaten. Instead, he had placed it on the narrow windowsill above his kitchen sink. It sat there all week, slowly hardening, but still releasing the faint smell of cinnamon, a message written in icing that had not faded. "Thank you, Tom." He tightened his coat around him and stepped out into the misty morning. The market was more subdued this early, its usual energy dampened by the rain. He walked toward the line of food vendors, nodding politely at a man unloading crates of assorted greens. His boots softly pressed into the wet grass as he approached Alice Williams' stall. She was already busy, her back turned to him as she arranged a stack of honey cornbread loaves, her apron fitting firmly around her waist. Her waist was wrapped in a loose scarf, and a thermos filled with something hot steamed next to a tray of muffins. Mia was nowhere to be seen. "Morning," he said softly but distinctly. Alice turned around, startled at first, then relaxed as a cautious smile appeared on her lips. "Well, good morning. You're back." "Yeah, figured I'd give the peach cobbler a try this time. Everyone raves about it like it's the best thing ever." She laughed quietly and grabbed a paper box. "That is a bold statement. I'd say the banana bread might just rival it." Tom observed her movements. Calm, efficient, well-practiced. "Are you here every weekend? Every Saturday, no matter the weather?" "Have to pay the rent somehow," she replied, handing him the box. "You came all this way just for cobbler?" He opened his mouth, hesitated, then shrugged. "Something like that." Before she could answer, a familiar voice called out behind him, "I told you he'd come back." Tom turned to see Mia standing a few steps away, arms crossed, eyes shining with triumph. She wore a raincoat, oversized but properly buttoned, and held a sketchbook under one arm. Mia looked at Alice and said softly, "We talked about this. I didn't say anything this time." "I just had a feeling," Mia added quickly, her eyes wide. Tom smiled faintly and crouched beside Alice. "You keeping your mom in line?" "I try," she whispered, leaning in slightly. "But she's stubborn like cornbread left in the oven too long." That made him chuckle. Alice's laughter was genuine this time, and Tom noticed a slight relaxation in her shoulders. He stood up and placed a couple of bills in her hand. "I will take the cobbler and maybe a few muffins to go," he said. As Alice carefully wrapped the items, Mia shifted nervously beside him and suddenly asked, "Did you enjoy the cookie?" Tom looked at her and nodded slowly. "I didn't eat it." Her expression dropped, but he added, "I kept it. It is still on my kitchen window and smells like cinnamon." Mia's face lit up. "That means you are thinking about us?" Alice handed over the bag, her expression unreadable now. "Mia, it is fine," Tom said, taking the bag. "She has great instincts." The brief silence stretched longer than expected. Alice stared at him for a moment and then gave a slight nod. "Listen," she said quietly, "I appreciate you being kind to her. She has been through so much and doesn't always understand that people come and go." "I'm not trying to confuse her," Tom replied honestly. "The truth is, I do not know what I am doing. I did not come here looking for anything. I was simply buying rosemary, and now you have given me muffins and a life proposition," Alice said with a dry smile. He returned a similar one. Suddenly, a breeze swept through the market, shaking tents and lifting corners of tablecloths. Alice reached out to steady a tray, and Tom instinctively helped her by pressing down on the plastic cover. "Thanks," she said, their hands briefly touching. For a moment, neither of them moved. Tom Carter said suddenly, "I have a front porch that needs refinishing. I was thinking of doing it next week before the real cold arrives." Alice raised an eyebrow. "That sounds like a job for 2 people." He paused thoughtfully. "Or maybe 3 if someone small wants to watch over us." Mia Williams' gasp of excitement was enough to attract others from nearby booths. "I will bring my paintbrush," she shouted. Alice laughed, shaking her head. "Lord help me," Tom exhaled, realizing he had been holding his breath. "I'm not saying anything has to change," he added. "Maybe just let me help carry some of the burden." Alice did not answer immediately, but she did not refuse either. As Tom started to walk away, Mia ran ahead, skipping across the damp grass. She twirled with her arms wide open before spinning back toward him. "You came back," she whispered, as if it were the most important truth in the world. Tom looked down at the cobbler in his hand, then at the mother and daughter, framed by flowers and the early morning mist. "Yes," he replied softly, "I did." On the following Tuesday, the sun appeared from behind a gray curtain, scattering warm light across the gentle hills of northern Vermont. Tom stood on his weathered porch, holding a can of faded barn red stain in one hand and a brush in the other. He glanced toward the long gravel driveway, half expecting that the invitation had been politely declined. Yet at 9 o'clock and 3 minutes in the morning, a dusty blue Subaru rolled into the clearing. Alice arrived. Tom stepped outside first, his hair tied back loosely in a ponytail, dressed casually in jeans and a flannel shirt, his expression marked by cautious hesitation. Mia followed closely behind, her small hand gripping a worn brush as she eagerly headed toward the porch. "I told you we'd show up," she said proudly, raising the brush like a victory flag. Tom laughed quietly and motioned toward the steps. "You're right on schedule." "Got everyone here," Mia added confidently. "I'm the foreman." "Seriously, Mom says I manage better than I clean," Alice chimed in with a shy grin as she climbed the stairs. "She's not wrong," Tom replied, handing her a steaming thermos. "Coffee just made. Black or with cream?" "Black," she answered, accepting it gratefully. They stood together for a moment, the calm silence stretching between them, both comfortable yet alert. The house was modest, built many years ago by Tom's grandfather, with chipped paint and a slightly askew railing that still withstood the tests of weather and time. Mia knelt beside the railing, brushing it carefully with intense dedication. "I'm trying to make it look brand new," she murmured, "so no one thinks it's abandoned." Tom glanced at Alice and asked, "Are you okay with this?" Alice exhaled deeply, her hands wrapped around the warm thermos. "Honestly, I'm not sure. I keep waiting for something to go wrong. But then she looks at you like you already belong in her world. Like she trusts you more than words can say." Tom nodded knowingly. She has that kind of power over people. Together, they began working side by side. Alice took care of the upper sections while Tom worked on the base, and Mia moved swiftly between them, occasionally stopping to check their technique. "You missed a patch," she told Tom, pointing out a rough area on the wood. "Looks like I need a quality control supervisor," he muttered. "Exactly," she smiled brightly. Hours slipped by as birds sang in the distance, and a soft breeze carried the aroma of drying leaves and aged pine. By lunchtime, the porch was halfway finished, and the three of them sat on the steps eating sandwiches. Tom had prepared turkey on rye with homemade pickles and sweet tea on the side. Alice took a bite and raised her eyebrows. "These pickles are dangerously tasty." "Family recipe," Tom said proudly. "My grandmother always said vinegar could fix more than just food." "She must have been wise," Alice replied. "She was tough too, always ready with a shotgun when squirrels got too bold in the garden." Alice laughed, a light, carefree sound. Mia rested her head on her mother's shoulder, chewing quietly. Tom watched them both, thinking they seemed to belong perfectly in this place, as if the porch had been waiting for their presence to fill it again. Still, he understood not to mistake a few calm hours for something permanent. Later in the afternoon, after Alice washed the brushes at the outdoor faucet, and Mia napped on an old quilt spread across the grass, Alice wandered toward the back garden. Rows of rosemary and lavender stood wild but charming in their disorder. "Did you do all this yourself?" she asked Tom. He nodded, pulling off his gloves. "Most of it took years, losing much to frost and dear moments. But you grow with experience." "It's beautiful," she remarked. "Not flawless, but beautiful." He glanced at her, sensing depth beneath her words. It felt like a metaphor. She shrugged, yet her smile remained unwavering. Perhaps they stood quietly, watching the wind sway the mint bushes. Tom hesitated before asking, "Do you ever think about leaving this place? Moving somewhere less complicated?" "Every single month. And yet you stay. Why?" She gazed at a patch of marigolds by the fence. "Because whenever I consider leaving, Mia discovers something here to cherish. A tree, a neighbor's dog." His breath hitched a little. Alice turned toward him without stepping back. "She is not subtle. She chooses her people quickly and decisively. I am just afraid she might be mistaken this time." "I get it," he said softly. "You are protecting her." "No, I am protecting both of us," she corrected. "You seem kind, Tom. Steady, but still a stranger. A good person, maybe. But I do not let good intentions raise my daughter. He nodded slowly. You shouldn't. She deserves more than mere good intentions. They remained there for a while, neither pushing forward nor retreating. The late afternoon sun stretched long shadows across the yard. Finally, Alice moved to gather their belongings. Mia was still dozing when she gently lifted her into her arms. She's getting heavy, Alice whispered with a smile. Need help? I have carried her this far. I can carry a bit longer. Tom Carter opened the truck door for her while Alice secured Mia Williams into her seat. She glanced back at him and said, Thanks for letting us be here today. He nodded and replied, You are welcome any time. She hesitated briefly before climbing in and starting the engine. The truck moved away slowly, dust rising behind it. Tom remained on the freshly stained porch, watching until the vehicle vanished into the trees. The brush Mia had dropped was still on the step. He picked it up carefully and placed it on the windowsill next to the now hardened cookie, whispering to no one, I don't know what this is, but I hope it lasts. Autumn deepened quietly over the Vermont hills. Leaves turned golden, mornings grew misty and sharp, while the farmer's market filled the air with pumpkin spice and baked apple aromas. Nearly a month had passed since the day the porch was painted, and during that time, Tom found himself drawn closer to the lives of Alice and Mia Williams. They had not officially moved in, yet their presence became a natural part of his daily routine, like old boots resting by the back door. On Thursdays, Alice started leaving extra loaves of molasses bread wrapped in tea towels on his porch, and on Sundays, Mia appeared with chalk drawings on index cards, slipping them into the mailbox slats. Each time Tom saw those swirling colors and uneven hearts crafted with crayon, something inside him softened in a way it had not for many years. That morning felt different, filled with unexpected warmth. Tom stood at the edge of the market, clutching a tray of rosemary plants, ready to donate them for the church fundraiser. The sky was heavy with clouds, but the air was comfortably warm, encouraging people to spend more time at each stall. He noticed Alice as she arranged her folding table. Dressed in a cozy brown sweater with cheeks pink from the chilly breeze, Mia accompanied her, carefully balancing a basket of pumpkin muffins as though it were a crown. Suddenly, a familiar voice called out across the path. A woman in her 60s with a broad-brimmed hat and silver braids hurried over. Good morning, Miss Ruthie, Alice greeted warmly while placing down a tray. Do you need more apple turnovers? I need more than that, but that's a good start, Ruthie chuckled, then glanced at Tom with a sly smile. You're the one she constantly pretends not to mention, right? Tom raised a brow. Is that so? Ruthie murmured, No one's buying that, sugar. Mia leaned over her basket and whispered urgently, She just called you sugar. Alice looked shocked. Miss Ruthie, you really know how to stir things up before noon. Ruthie laughed again and walked away with her pastries, waving playfully. Tom moved closer, offering Mia a small sprig of mint from his pocket. Here, this is for your lemonade experiments. Mia squealed, gently grabbing it and holding it up like a scientist inspecting a precious find. Mom, now we can try the blueberry mint idea. You are going to turn our kitchen into a world of flavors, Alice whispered. Yet her smile remained as they worked together. Side by side, Tom helped Alice fix a broken table leg using a spare brace from his truck, while Mia drew hopscotch lines with leftover chalk in a quiet corner of the market. Customers passed by as Alice brushed flour off her apron and leaned closer to Tom than she had a week ago, her gaze less guarded, more assured. Warmth lingered between them, though every comfort carries its own shadows. Around midday, a man dressed in a neat blue polo and khaki pants approached their stand. He was clean-shaven, well-fed, and kept his sunglasses on despite the overcast sky. He stopped abruptly when he spotted Alice. A surprised smirk spread across his face as he said, Well, I didn't expect to see you back in town. Tom and Alice froze. Her expression barely shifted, but her hand moved instinctively to steady Mia by resting on her shoulder. Hello, Jordan, she said calmly. The man glanced at Mia, then back at Alice, and finally at Tom, who remained motionless. Is this him? Jordan asked, nodding toward Tom. Is he the new project? Tom narrowed his eyes. Why exactly have you come here? Jordan smiled as if he always got what he wanted. Business trip. Figured I'd explore the local scene. Had no idea Alice was involved. Mia tugged at her mother's apron and said softly, "Mom, can we go home now?" Alice hesitated before answering. Tom stepped forward, positioning himself discreetly between Jordan and the two of them. "You have checked it out. Maybe it is time to move on now." Jordan scoffed, though the certainty in his voice wavered just a bit. "All right, man. No need to get territorial. I am simply making conversation," Tom responded calmly. "Usually, conversations do not come cloaked in disrespect." Jordan retreated with an exaggerated shrug. "Some people never change," he muttered, half to himself, half to Alice. "They just become better actors," he added before walking away. Alice exhaled sharply and turned back to her table, her hands quivering slightly. Tom remained silent for the moment. He bent down to assist Mia in collecting the muffins that had shifted during the tense moment. Later, after the market had quieted down, they sat together on a bench behind the vendor stalls. Mia leaned against her mother's side, half asleep. "Alice," Tom said softly, "do I need to ask who he was?" "No," she answered, "but I will tell you anyway." She gazed at the trees, her voice steady. "Jordan was Mia's father. He left when I was 3 months pregnant. He said he was not ready, said I was too much for him then. For 6 years, he said nothing at all." Tom clenched his jaw, withholding words. "I do not want him near her. Not now, not ever." "You will not have to worry," Tom assured her, "as long as I am here." Alice looked at him, her expression void of sentiment, only honesty. "Will you be around, Tom?" she asked. He paused. "I have not figured everything out yet, but I want to be. To be exactly where you are, where she is," Mia stirred, mumbling softly in her sleep. "I like it when he is close." Neither of them moved for a long moment. Then Alice rested her head gently on his shoulder and whispered, "I am still afraid." "I am too," he replied. "But maybe," she added with a trembling voice, "we can learn how to stop being afraid together." Tom gazed upward at the graying sky. Somewhere beyond the clouds, the sun was still shining, and for the first time in a long while, he dared to believe it might pierce through. The cold arrived quickly, that weak chill typical of New England autumn evenings, where fall feels more like a quiet breath before winter arrives at the door. Frost painted the edges of the pasture behind Tom's farmhouse, and the porch, which was once freshly stained and bright, was now sprinkled white in the early morning light. Alice had not replied to his last message. It had been 3 days. That alone would not have been strange. She was busy, Mia could be overwhelming, and the bakery orders typically increased before Thanksgiving. But something felt different. The silence disturbed him the most. Not silence born of anger, just absence. Alice was never known to disappear without a word, not even when overwhelmed. So that morning, Tom drove into town. The farmer's market was closed for the season. Bare trees replaced the stalls, now shuttered and empty. He passed the old white church, turned onto Maple Hollow Road, and parked just down from their small duplex near the post office. He knocked on the door. No answer at the door, so he knocked once more, harder this time, yet still no response. Then he heard it, a faint cough and soft footsteps. The door creaked open just a few inches and Mia's face appeared, pale and anxious. "Tom." Her voice barely rose above a whisper. "Hi there, kiddo. Is your mom home?" Mia nodded, but then hesitated before saying, "She's lying down. Don't wake her, but she keeps waking up anyway." Tom's eyes narrowed. "Can I come in?" She nodded again and stepped aside. The house was warm yet dim, filled with the low buzz of a heater near the living room. The faint scent of bread lingered in the air but felt stale, like a half-forgotten memory. Dirty dishes were piled in the sink, and a tray of burnt scones rested on the stove. On the couch, wrapped in 2 quilts, lay Alice, her face paler than he had ever seen it. Her eyes fluttered open as he drew near. "You came," she whispered, trying to sit up. Tom gently knelt beside her. "Stop. Don't move." "It's just the flu," she said softly. "I've been through worse." Tom pressed the back of his hand to her forehead. "It's burning. You need to see a doctor." "I can't afford to miss work, Tom." Her voice cracked as she explained. "We have deliveries next week, Thanksgiving rush, and Mia is terrified." Tom interrupted, and pretending not to notice, Alice winced. "Don't make this harder." "Then stop making it easier for everyone but yourself." he said sharply, sharper than intended. She looked away and he softened. Sorry, I just don't handle this well. Alice was not alone. She remained quiet for a moment before whispering, I have not eaten since Tuesday, only tea. Everything else comes back up. Tom stood and said, Get dressed. We are going to the clinic. I cannot leave Mia, she replied. She will come with us. He glanced at Mia, who was curled up on the floor hugging her knees. Put on your coat, sweetheart. We are going for a ride. At the clinic, Alice almost collapsed upon entering. The nurse gave Tom a sharp look until Mia, with her calm and steady voice, explained that her mother had been unwell for a week and hardly eaten anything. There were blood tests, IV drips, and quiet sobbing behind thin curtains. Hours passed, and Mia fell asleep on Tom's lap in the waiting area, her small hands still clutching a stuffed elephant. Eventually, the doctor, a middle-aged man appearing weary from too many difficult cases, came out and said, She is not in immediate danger, but she is very malnourished and dehydrated, pushing herself beyond limits. That sounds serious, muttered Tom. She needs proper rest and nutrition. If this continues for a few more days, we could be looking at heart problems or worse. Tom nodded and thanked him. You are not family, not officially. The doctor hesitated, then added softly, but unofficially she is lucky to have you. Most people would let her keep going until she really collapses. That night back at the farmhouse, Tom prepared the guest room. Alice lay in bed, fragile but finely nourished, and he sat nearby, relieved she was safe. He managed to persuade her to eat some mashed potatoes and sip on broth. Mia curled up next to her for a while, but then wandered into the living room, where Tom was stacking firewood by the old stove. Is she feeling better now? Mia asked. Getting there, he replied. She nodded and then walked over to lean against him. I knew you would come even when she said not to bother you. She said that because she is scared. She says things like that when fear takes over. Tom crouched down and looked into her eyes. Are you afraid? Mia slowly nodded, not because of the woman, but because sometimes people leave when times get tough. He took a deep breath. I'm not leaving, Mia. Not because it's difficult, not for any reason. Her lips trembled. Even if she yells or tries to push you away, even then he held her tightly and whispered, Okay. Later, when Alice stirred and opened her eyes, she saw Tom sitting quietly in the armchair near the fire, the flickering light dancing on the walls. You are still here, she whispered. He smiled without saying a word. She held back her tears and asked why he stayed. Because you need someone who does not leave. Her hand reached out from beneath the blanket. He took it gently. Her grip was faint but steady. You didn't have to do all this, she murmured. No, he answered, but I wanted to. In the silence that followed, with Mia sleeping peacefully in the next room and the fire crackling softly, something between them stopped resisting. Something gave in to surrender, but a surrender based on trust, the kind that holds even in the hardest moments. Tom knew that what he had was earned, never simply asked for, and he felt certain, as the wind pressed firmly against the farmhouse walls, that he was exactly where he needed to be on this Thanksgiving morning. The day arrived shrouded in frost and silence, a stillness only found in quiet rural towns. Slowly, sunlight stretched over the hills, warming the fields just enough to melt the frost on the fence posts, but leaving the air itself crisp and cold. Tom was already awake, standing by the stove and stirring a pot of sweet potatoes while the aroma of rosemary and brown sugar clung to his sweatshirt. The farmhouse had never felt so full before. Alice had insisted on helping, but Tom had sent her back to the guest room with a firm look and a mug of ginger tea. She wasn't strong enough yet, and though she grumbled quietly about being treated like a child, she wrapped herself in a blanket on the couch and opened a copy of Southern Living. Meanwhile, Mia was a whirlwind of energy. She had made name cards for the table, using construction paper and crayons, carefully writing Mom, Me, and Mr. Thomas in shades of orange and red. The R in Mr. curled backward, resembling a candy cane. Peeking from the kitchen, Tom smiled. Is that a turkey I see on your card, Mia? She beamed. He's wearing a hat like you do, she said, touching the brim of her aged farm cap. I'm honored. She then skipped back to the kitchen. Can I mash the potatoes? Are you sure you can handle that kind of responsibility? He teased. I'll supervise, she replied confidently. On the porch, Tom Carter laughed as he handed her the masher and said, Knock yourself out, boss. By midday, the table was arranged with a charming mix of mismatched plates, an old flannel runner, and 3 cloth napkins folded into uneven triangles. Alice, now dressed and sitting up straight, observed everything with a sense of amazement in her eyes, as if she doubted this moment was real. You didn't need to make all this, she whispered softly when Tom placed the roasted turkey breast and cornbread stuffing down. I wanted to, he replied simply. Meanwhile, Mia mashed half of the food with skill. She truly has a talent. Alice smiled, then glanced around the table, acknowledging this marked the first genuine Thanksgiving meal they had shared since Mia was born. Tom blinked, surprised. Really? We usually just warmed something from the grocery store, or Mia ate cereal while I dozed off on the couch because that was easier, he admitted. He paused before adding, Easy is not always what we truly need. They took their seats, and Mia held both their hands, suggesting, We should say something like a prayer. Tom agreed, asking, Like a thank you? Yes, that is what Thanksgiving means, Mia answered. Alice nodded and gently squeezed her daughter's hand. Go ahead, baby, she encouraged. Closing her eyes, Mia whispered, Thank you for the food, for a warm home, for people who stay, and for Mr. Tom who came even when he didn't have to. Amen. Tom remained silent for a while, feeling a lump in his throat too large to swallow with the gravy. After the meal, they settled on the couch with pea pecan and apple close by. A little overcooked, yet still tasty, the fire crackled inside the wood stove. Mia was nestled between them, already drowsy from the meal and warmth. Alice glanced at Tom, her voice tender. You never speak about her. He turned his head slowly. Who is your wife? He breathed out. Her name was Lillian. We met in Georgia. She was wild, kind, and knew how to dance to music that no one else could hear. Alice smiled softly. How long were you married? 7 years. Cancer took her before she turned 35. I stayed in Georgia for a bit after, but the memories became too loud, so I came here where the quiet helped. I'm sorry, she said. He nodded. I never tried to fill that space. I thought I never would. Alice was silent for a moment before adding, I believe spaces like that are not meant to be filled, but shared in a different way. Tom looked at her. Is that what we are doing? She hesitated. I'm not sure, maybe I just know it feels different now. Not easy, not perfect, but like something I don't want to lose. Tom reached out and took her hand. Just then, Mia stirred beside them, muttered something about cookies and milk, and fell back asleep. Alice looked at her, then at him, a gentle smile breaking through the tired lines on her face. You have become part of her world faster than I ever imagined anyone could. Tom brushed a strand of hair from Mia's forehead. She has a way of making space for people, whether they are ready or not. They sat together for a while longer, the silence between them no longer heavy but peaceful. Tom Carter experienced a surprising relief deep within his chest, as if a long-held tension had finally started to loosen. The day's close was quiet, without grand displays or celebrations, but rather with dishes left in the sink, gentle breathing echoing on the couch, and a porch light casting a warm glow into the surrounding darkness. Later that night, after Alice had carried Mia to bed and Tom had tended the fire one last time, he noticed a crayon drawing at the edge of the kitchen table. It depicted 3 stick figures, one tall with a hat, one with a curly ponytail, and one small with a huge smile. Above them, written in vibrant purple crayon, were the words, This is our house now. Tom gazed at the drawing for a long moment, and for the first time in many years, he did not feel like a man who had lost something. Instead, he felt like a man who had truly returned home. As winter took hold with finality, snow blanketed the roofs and softened each sunrise, making the world outside the farmhouse seem quieter and more serene. The seasons seemed to demand a calm stillness. Yet inside Tom Carter's home, life felt warmer and more vibrant than it had in years. Alice and Mia spent most days there, filling the space with life. Alice continued to bake, now using Tom's kitchen, which soon smelled of cinnamon, nutmeg, and something resembling a sense of belonging. Mia had claimed the small room beneath the eaves as her own, and decorated it with paper snowflakes, hearts cut from construction paper, and a collection of smooth stones she was convinced held magical powers. On Saturdays, this little sanctuary became a kingdom of wonder and comfort. One morning, Tom Carter found himself sitting at the table with Mia Williams. helping her attach buttons to a snowman crafted from cotton balls. Alice was in the kitchen with her sleeves rolled up and her hair tied back with a red ribbon, stirring batter with the focused attention she usually reserved for keeping things from falling apart. "This one's yours, Mia," Tom said, pointing to a snowman adorned with a crooked cowboy hat drawn in marker. "Because of the hat. He looks like he takes care of the others," Tom added with a smile. Before he could reply, a sharp knock rattled the front door. He glanced toward the entrance, then at Alice, who had frozen in mid-stir, her knuckles tightening around the wooden spoon. Tom stood up and asked if anyone was expected. Alice shook her head slowly. Opening the door, Tom saw Jordan standing there once more, wearing the same smug grin and the same pristine khakis, as if winter had no effect on him. Behind Jordan was a woman in a wool coat clutching a clipboard. "Tom Carter?" the woman asked. "I'm from Family Services. We received a report that a minor is living in an unlicensed home without proper guardianship." Tom blinked in surprise while Alice approached the doorway, her face pale. Jordan spoke casually, hands in pockets. "I told them she was letting a stranger take care of my daughter. I figured it was time for someone responsible to intervene." "She isn't your daughter," Alice hissed. "You left. You gave her up the moment you disappeared." "Legally, I am still her father," he replied coldly, "and I have concerns." Tom stepped forward in front of Alice, his voice calm but resolute. "You cannot just appear once every 6 years and claim the role of a parent." The caseworker glanced between them, her face unreadable but attentive. "Mr. Carter, I need to verify who is currently living here and in what capacity." "Is Mia Williams living here full-time?" she asked. "Yes, she stays most days," Tom replied, "because her mother is recovering from illness, and this home offers a safe environment." The woman then turned to Alice. "Miss Williams, are you unable to care for your child?" Alice responded shakily, "No, I am not. I just needed support, and Tom has been helping us both." The woman neither nodded nor frowned. "There will be a follow-up. We might have to speak with Mia directly at her school. Please understand this is routine." Jordan gave a satisfied shrug, saying, "Just doing what any concerned parent would." Tom slammed the door before the man could respond further. The silence afterward was heavy and bitter. Alice collapsed onto the couch, hiding her face in her hands, whispering, "He did this because I refused to let him back in. Because I told him to leave us alone." Tom sat beside her. "He only wants control." "This is a show," she said in a trembling voice. "He could take her, even if just long enough to cause pain." "No," Tom said firmly. "That will never happen." "But what if the system listens to him? What if they think I am unstable because of the hospital situation or our decision to stay here? What if they believe Mia is better off with God?" I cannot even bring myself to say it. Tom leaned in closer and gently placed his hand over hers, then said, "We will prove them wrong. Show everyone the truth that you are her mother, that Mia is flourishing, and that this place, this home, is not a threat but rather a sanctuary." That evening, Mia sensed something was amiss. She came and nestled between them on the sofa, resting her head against Alice's arm. "Is someone trying to take me away?" she whispered so softly that only Tom could hear. Alice's expression crumbled. "No, baby. No one is taking you from us. We are just working to find the safest way to keep you here." Mia looked up at Tom and asked, "Are you leaving?" He responded immediately, "No, not now, never." She did not ask any more questions, but simply nodded and leaned into his side, as if she knew that answer was enough. The following days passed in a blur. Alice met with a lawyer from a neighboring town, gathering money she did not have. Tom reached out to neighbors, friends, and anyone who had witnessed Mia's growth since arriving at the farmhouse. A retired teacher from the church volunteered to write a statement. "I have noticed that little girl laugh more in the past month than ever before," she said. "That kind of happiness is genuine." Yet, the fear remained. On Wednesday night, Tom found Alice standing by the window, watching the snow fall. "They could still twist it," she whispered. "Turn love into something dangerous." This was not the first time a black mother had to fight for the right to raise her own child. Tom stepped beside her and said, "Then we fight together." She turned to him, her eyes weary but unbroken. "Are you certain you want this? It's messy, complicated, and it will not end quietly. I never needed quiet, he replied. I only needed the two of you. She studied him silently for a long moment before softly saying, Then do not ask me for anything. Just stay. And he stayed, not out of duty or obligation, but because in that countryside house beneath that roof, he had found a cause worth standing for and a family worth defending with all he had. The Rutland courthouse was nothing grand, just a small square building faintly scented with varnish and paper. Yet to Alice it felt like a fortress. The waiting room was too bright, the chairs rigid and uncomfortable. Mia sat beside her, legs swinging, with a sketchbook balanced on her lap. She was drawing a tree with 3 trunks instead of one, its roots tangled like fingers. Tom stood across from them, arms crossed, trying to resist pacing. He wore his cleanest flannel shirt, carefully ironed the night before, and boots polished with more effort than he would admit. On the other side of the room sat Jordan, their lawyer, with sleek hair, a black briefcase, and the confidence of someone who had not spent a day alone for years. Do not look at him, Alice whispered to Mia. I am not, Mia answered. I am drawing. Alice reached out, smoothing the girl's curls with a trembling hand. Good. Tom took a seat. Standing beside them and leaning in, our attorney said she will concentrate on stability, focusing on what Mia is familiar with and where she is flourishing. Don't worry. I'm not worried, Alice muttered, though her pale knuckles suggested otherwise. If not, I'll be furious. Mia glanced up. Am I going to have to live with him? Alice's throat tightened. She tried to reply, but could not. No, Tom said firmly and quietly. We are here to ensure that does not happen. The clerk appeared at the door announcing William versus Rhodes, in hearing room 2. Alice rose slowly, her knees unsteady, and Tom placed his hand gently on her lower back to support her. Calmly, Mia took Alice's fingers in one hand and Tom's in the other. The 3 entered together. The courtroom was small, with only a judge's bench, 2 tables, and rows of pew-like seats. Behind Alice sat a woman named Becca Sims, who greeted them with a composed nod, saying, You don't need to say much unless asked. Just be truthful and avoid provoking him. Jordan's attorney began with a narrative expressing concern that Mia was living with a non-relative, mentioning Alice's recent health struggles and the child's confusion regarding her father figure. Alice clenched her jaw, while Becca rose to present a contrasting account. She praised Alice's dedication and perseverance in her recovery, highlighted Mia's school achievements, which had improved markedly, and quoted statements from witnesses, including a Sunday school teacher who observed that Mia had emerging from her shell like a sunflower turning towards the light. She had brought Tom not as a substitute, but as a presence, a guardian, a man who in his own sorrow had discovered meaning through compassion. Then, Your Honor, Becca said, we request the court hear from Mia in a setting considered suitable, because her voice, though quiet, carries great importance. The judge, a middle-aged black woman with streaks of silver in her hair, nodded. I have reviewed the statements. I would like to speak with Mia privately in my chambers. Both parents and guardians will remain here. Mia glanced at her mother, Alice, who gave her a reassuring nod. It is all right, baby. Just speak to her as you would to me. Alice held her sketchbook firmly while the bailiff escorted Mia away. The silence that followed was almost unbearable. Jordan tapped his fingers nervously on the table. Tom stared straight ahead, silent. Alice closed her eyes and silently prayed, though she did not know to whom or for what, only that she wished for her daughter's spirit to remain whole. 15 minutes passed, then 20. When Mia returned, she appeared calm, not fearless, not frightened, but resolute. The judge came back 5 minutes later, her expression unreadable. She said, Having examined all evidence and spoken privately with the minor, I am ready to issue a temporary ruling with plans to review it in 6 months. Alice's stomach tightened. Custody will stay with Miss Alice Williams. The judge went on. Mr. Rhodes is not granted visitation rights at this moment. Should he wish to request visitation again, he must, showing steady involvement, emotional balance, and a readiness to support Mia's current life without causing any disturbance. Alice let out a sound somewhere between a sob and a gasp. Tom reached for her hand quietly beneath the table. The judge was not finished and added, I also urge this court to recognize the influence Mr. Tom Carter has had on this child's emotional health. Although he is not a legal guardian, his presence is significant. If Mr. Carter and Miss Williams plan to make their family situation official, the court will consider that in any forthcoming rulings. Jordan's lawyer leaned in, whispering something sharp. Jordan rose suddenly, but the judge raised a hand to stop him. This court does not tolerate tantrums from adults. Mr. Rhodes, I advise you to remain seated. Slowly, with a flushed face, he sat back down. Outside the courthouse, snow began to fall gently. The world remained gray, yet somehow it seemed softer than before. Alice knelt down and wrapped Mia tightly in her arms, whispering repeatedly, "You are safe. You're safe. You're safe." Tom stepped back, giving them space, but Mia reached out and tugged on his coat sleeve. "What did you say to the judge?" Alice asked once they were all together again. Mia looked up and said, "I showed her my drawing, the one with the tree that has 3 trunks," Tom asked. "And what did you tell her it meant?" Mia replied, "That I don't live in a broken home. I live in a growing one. It's different, but it is real." Later that night, back at the farmhouse, Alice placed the sketchbook carefully on the table. Tom Carter kindled a fire in the hearth, while Mia Williams dozed peacefully, nestled between them on the sofa. There were no lengthy speeches or grand announcements, just the gentle rhythm of a child's breath, the coziness of a shared blanket, and the soothing crackle of burning wood in the stillness. This was a family, not born of blood, but chosen by heart, safe, grounded, and truly home. Spring crept in with soft, deliberate movements. Snow slowly vanished from the hilltops, its meltwater flowing into brooks that had long forgotten their songs. Birds timidly returned, lively and awkward, pecking at Tom's herb garden and scolding him whenever he strayed too close. Inside the farmhouse, life found a steady yet imperfect rhythm, full of vitality. Alice had taken command of the kitchen by then, not because Tom was incapable of cooking, quite the opposite, but because she delighted in it. The noise of clattering bowls, the aroma of warm vanilla, and the way Mia tiptoed in each morning for secret spoonfuls of batter had become her sanctuary. Tom gradually stopped observing them from afar. He no longer stood outside the circle of comfort. Instead, he stepped fully into it, muddy boots and worn hands carrying a heart, slowly healing exactly where it needed to. One Sunday afternoon, the three were deeply engaged in biscuit dough. Mia was in charge of cutting shapes, determined to make hearts, stars, and one peculiar biscuit she insisted resembled a goat. Alice teased with fondness. "That's either a goat or a very confused moon." "It's love," Mia answered with earnestness. "Love doesn't need to look perfect." Tom Carter smiled quietly without saying a word, wiping his hands on a towel before leaving the kitchen briefly. Moments later, he returned holding a small wooden box, a cherished keepsake from his grandmother who taught him how to prepare dill pickles and how to weather heartbreak. He carefully placed it on the counter next to Alice's rolling pin adorned with flowers. She looked at the box and then at him, curious. "What is this? Something you've been thinking about for some time?" Mia looked up from her goat heart biscuit and asked, "Is it candy?" Tom shook his head with a gentle smile. "No, it is sweet, though." Alice wiped her hands on her apron and slowly lifted the lid. Inside rested a simple silver ring, delicate yet sturdy, with a small amber gem set at its center. The ring was not flashy or new, but carried deep significance. Alice remained silent, her fingers hovering over the ring, as if afraid it might disappear at the slightest touch. Tom spoke softly. "I know we've weathered many storms. It hasn't always been easy, but this home, this life, feels like something we created together. I want to keep building it with you, as your partner, as Mia's parent. Not just a friend or someone who comes and goes, but someone who stays." Alice parted her lips, but found no words. Tom continued firmly, "I'm not asking for a wedding next week. I am asking for your permission to stand by your side, to belong here officially, to choose you every single day. Both of you." Mia's eyes widened and she whispered, "This is sweeter than candy." Alice chuckled quietly, one hand gently covering her mouth while the other rested on the edge of the wooden box. Are you actually serious? She asked. Absolutely serious, Tom replied. Though Mia mentioned the ring should come with a biscuit, so I am hoping that might earn me some extra points. Alice picked up the ring and held it to the light. The amber gleamed like a drop of honey in the sunlight. My answer, she whispered, has always been yes. I was just too afraid to say it out loud. Tom moved closer. Still scared? He inquired. Yes, she admitted, but less than before. He reached for her hand, and she allowed him to slip the ring onto her finger. It was not a perfect fit, but just right enough. Mia clapped her flour-coated hands and exclaimed, Now we have to bake wedding cookies. It's a tradition I saw on television. 7 days later, the wedding took place beneath the tall maple tree in the field behind the farmhouse. There were no pews or formal vows written in golden ink, just a small group of friends from the town, neighbors who brought folding chairs and deviled eggs, and Ruthie from the market who insisted on leading the ceremony, despite having no official qualifications, beyond her booming voice and strong sense of fairness. Mia wore a white sundress paired with pink sneakers. Tom donned his best shirt and a crooked necktie that Alice had tried to fix 3 times before giving up. Alice did not carry a bouquet, but held a warm loaf of cinnamon bread instead. She handed it to Tom at the altar and said, This is how I say I love you. Tom's eyes, full of emotion, answered with a simple nod. Then I will never be hungry again. When Ruthie inquired if anyone opposed, Mia stood up and said, I object if there is no cake. The crowd chuckled, and someone offered her a slice of carrot cake with cream cheese frosting. Following the vows, Mia tugged at Tom's sleeve and asked, Does this mean I can call you Dad now? Tom knelt down, his voice thick with emotion. Only if you want to. She hugged him tightly. I have wanted to for a long time. I just did not want to rush you. That evening, after the guests had departed and the lanterns dimmed, Tom, Alice, and Mia sat quietly on the porch, tired and content. The stars were shining and the breeze whispered through the leaves like an old lullaby. Mia rested her head on Tom's shoulder, while Alice intertwined her fingers with his. Do you remember the first time I came here? She murmured. I was terrified. So was I, Tom replied, but you still opened the door. Alice nodded, and you never let it close again. Tom gazed at them both, his wife and daughter, not by blood, but by every meaningful choice. He did not need a grand estate or a lavish life. He had a porch, he had joy, and he had love that no longer required asking. It had found its place, and so had he.